Hi, the SI meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Tuesday, January 10th. Well, of course, we've had quite a mild pattern here to begin the winter in the eastern part of the U.S. We kind of locked into a warmer than normal pattern during the month of November, and that continued right through December. January has started off with a kind of a mixed bag, some cold air outbreaks mixed in with some mild spells. But back in the middle part of December, there were initial indications of a potential stratospheric warming event over the polar region. And in the past, stratospheric warming events have occasionally led to complete temperature reversals in the eastern part of the U.S. some several weeks later. That particular video, we kind of highlighted a couple of recent stratospheric warming events, one from 1984 that continued into early 1985, and another one from the late 1998 into early 1999. And it did take several weeks for those events to take place, from the initial warming over the polar region to the complete reversal in temperatures here in the eastern part of the U.S. That particular video is on our Meteorology 101 section of the siweather.com. Well, this is the way the upper air looked over the North Pole, over the polar region, the middle part of December here. Actually, December 15th, we had not at all atypical. This is a rather usual polar vortex looking scenario here in the middle part of December. The cold polar vortex, North Pole is centered right about here. Notice on the legend here we're going all the way down to the purples, minus 85 or minus 80 degrees at 10 millibars. This is the stratosphere over the pole. Now, let's jump ahead to what the GFS is now forecasting for about 10 days from now. And here you go. This is the same part of the atmosphere over the same part of the globe, over the North Pole region here, the North Pole Center right here. This is a complete turnaround from what we saw 3 weeks or so ago in the middle part of December, from this to this. Now, in the past, occasionally in the past, this has led to a change in the upper air pattern over the Arctic region, in specifically a blocking pattern tended to form after a major stratospheric warming event over the polar region. In those winters of 1984 to 1985, the temperature was much above normal in December in the eastern U.S. and then quite a bit below normal in January of 1985. Same sort of scenario unfolded from 1998 December to January 1999. Could this happen again here over the next several weeks? Well, it certainly looks like there's going to be a major pattern change beginning about Friday of this week for the next several weeks, thanks in large part to this stratospheric warming event. Now, in terms of a blocking pattern over the Arctic, one of the things we can look at as meteorologists are these indexes called the North Atlantic Oscillation or the Arctic Oscillation. They're kind of related to each other, to see if, in fact, an Arctic block is about to set up. Specifically speaking, if the Arctic Oscillation and North Atlantic Oscillation become negative, that tends to indicate that there's a blocking pattern setting up over the Arctic, which in turn allows cold air to penetrate into the central U.S. and the eastern U.S. and not only penetrate, but also last for a while. We've, of course, had some cold air outbreaks, but they've been quick shots, 1 or 2 day shots. If the NAO and the Arctic Oscillation both go negative and blocking develops over the Arctic region, then we could have more sustained cold air here in the Mid-Atlantic region in the entire eastern U.S. And in fact, this is the very latest GFS ensemble of the Arctic Oscillation, and this is the forecast for the next 10 days or so. And you can see the general trend here is to go negative over the mid to latter part of January. Similarly, the North Atlantic Oscillation, seen right here, tends to kind of go along the neutral line for a few days, but then the third week or so of January tends to become more on the negative side. So these forecasts for the NAO and the AO of going negative also support the notion that there can very well be a blocking pattern setting up over the next few weeks in the Arctic region that in turn will not only bring colder air into the eastern U.S. but sustain cold air for the latter part of the month of January. Now, those last two oscillation charts were from Dr. Ryan Maury's website. Now, one other factor that is playing a role in the upcoming weather is what's going on over the Pacific Ocean. We've had a La Nina for the last several months, which is colder than normal temperatures in the eastern part of the tropical Pacific, and there have been quite signals of a drastic change going on over the last few weeks. This is an index here that's kept that kind of describes the magnitude of the La Nina. And here, as of Christmas time, it was all the way up to 49.20. This is positive here, represents La Nina on this particular index. And this, again, is at Christmas time. Now, just notice what's going on. This is a daily value that has just absolutely plunged over the last couple of weeks. Now, the La Nina typically will support the strong southeastern ridge, which in turn leads to milder than normal temperatures all the way up and down the east coast. And the fact that this is plunging right now may very well lead to a weakening of that southeastern ridge. So this, combined with what's going on over the polar region, definitely leads to the possibility of much colder weather for the second half of January, perhaps on into February. Again, this has pretty much plunged over the last couple of weeks. Quite an impressive change in a short period of time. Well, are there any signs right now from the short-range models like the European model or the GFS model in terms of a potential cold air outbreak or a series of cold air outbreaks? They certainly are for the second half of January. This is looking ahead from the European model. It's quite a long-range forecast out to 10 days, but this is the 850 millibar temperature pattern from the European model, last night's run, and it just has a tremendous blob of cold air here sitting in the southern part of Canada right into the northern part of the U.S. This is last night's run of the European model. In fact, some of the coldest air in northern hemisphere is sitting right here. The polar vortex is seemingly shifting southward here according to the very latest European model run for about 10 days from now. In addition to that, the GFS is showing some signs of some major cold air outbreaks. Here's the GFS. It's a long-range forecast. It's kind of speculation stage, but nonetheless, the GFS here, this is for about the 24th of January, just has an unbelievable cold air outbreak here with thickness values all the way down to 504 here, just over the Ohio Valley, and just a tremendous plunge of Arctic air here. So both models, the European and the GFS, are forecasting potential very cold air masses for the latter part of January. So we will continue to monitor this situation here at the siweather.com over the next several days, but it appears as if we may very well look back on this Friday as a turning point for a much colder weather pattern. Doesn't mean it'll be cold or below normal for the rest of the month, but cold air outbreaks will be more and more frequent, and they will last longer, certainly, than they have during the first part of the winter. That's it for now. I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian.